Let's just bring in Comic Man Andy and do a little recap. We're not
Yeah,
live. We don't got everybody in, but hey, how's everybody doing here at Mainframe Comic Con live with StreamYard? Why is that up there?
I'm
No
fixing it.
product placement. No product placement. Comic Man Andy, man, how's it going? Your mic's muted, I think.
Hey, how are you guys this evening?
Great job, by the way, on Mainframe Comic Con.
Yeah, gonna rep the boys. Had to stop warming the bench tonight and step up and help out. What they got called away on a bit of an emergency this weekend, but we're gonna rep the Simpleman's Comics tonight still.
So we're about to get into the IDW or it presents Canto. Yes?
Yes, sir.
Excited?
Oh yeah, absolutely, man.
Me too, man. What a time, Mainframe has been this entire time. If you guys are watching this, coming up pretty soon, we're going to do a deep dive on the Canto comic book. It's going to be really cool, hosted by our boy Comic Man Andy, and it's going to be great, man. But yeah, like Chad, like I was telling you, man, Frank Dukes. We had Frank Dukes, the real Frank Dukes, the actual blood sport champion, the Kumite champion, Mr. Frank Dukes, the real guy, was just in Hall E like 20 minutes ago. It was incredible. He wasn't even on the schedule.
They got somebody
showed up.
Friday the 13th right now on
not
Friday
Friday
the
Elm Street
13th.
also.
Nightmare on Elm Street, and
Yep.
then
and Wes Craven's new Nightmare, she's killing it over in Hall E. If you guys aren't exploring all of the hall spaces in Mainframe Comic-Con, you are missing quite a bit. There's so much going on in our 5 panel halls. Like, I didn't even get to watch the Chip Zdarsky panel. I'm kind of bummed about that. I'm gonna have to watch that in post.
it was an interesting day altogether.
It was great. It was so awesome. I mean, Mainframe has been absolutely phenomenal. We bring the top names in broadcasting to host our panels, yourself included, Mr. Comic Man Andy. We've had the top names in comics, top names in entertainment. I don't know if you guys caught the Lisa Emery interview with Robert Meyer Burnett. It was so good. They did a deep dive on all 3 seasons of Ozark. She talked about, she plays Darlene Snell in the Ozark show, and they did a deep dive and talked a little bit about what we can maybe expect in season 4 of Ozark. She was the Purple Man's mother in Jessica Jones on Netflix. It was phenomenal. That was right here in Hall A. Hall A has been amazing. We just wrapped up with Mark Waid, which was incredible. If we ever get Mark Waid on, we got to have him for longer. We got to book him for like a 2-hour panel, because the comment section was just absolutely exploding. Everybody loves Mark Waid. It's just been a crazy day, man. We had Greg Rucka talking about the old guard. That was originally planned for 30 minutes, but we were like, you know what? Let's just keep this going. We pushed that for an entire hour. He talked all about making the transition from comic books into screenwriting and screenwriting plans in the future. It was the most amazing day. Hall A was great. All the halls at Mainframe Comic Con this week have been phenomenal. So, Comic Man Andy, do you have a favorite part? Sorry.
the fact that you're able to run 5 halls, do it well, and put out this level of content continuously for an entire weekend is epic. That's my favorite part.
So, Andy, can I share something?
Absolutely.
So, Andy stepped up. If everybody knows, Andy's a good friend of our friends over at Simple Man Comics. And this last panel, in conjunction with IDW, is supporting in it. And I'm going to put the banner up if you guys can. There's a GoFundMe right now for Simple Man's best friend, James Pop, passed away on Tuesday. And if you guys can, go support James's family. It was a hard time. We also lost the Edwin from the Comic Jabroni over the weekend, and we need to pull together as a community. But
there it is, scrolling on the bottom of the screen.
Yeah, but to keep this panel going, me and Chuck are going to step back. We're going to hand the reins over to Andy. Andy, I'll produce in the back for you, buddy. I got you. Because your 2 guests are here. One that he didn't know if he was going to be able to, because he has a full-time job too. So, Andy, it's all yours, brother.
Hey, thanks, guys. I'll take it from here.
No, Dad?
Thanks, Dad. Hey, guys. I'm Comic Man Andy of Andy Given Thursdays, only on the Comic Core, live at 10 p.m. every Thursday night. Here to host this incredible panel I'm really excited for. I love comic books. What would I love more than just comic books? indie comic books. So tonight we're here. We're going to introduce these guests. Without further ado, we're just going to dive right in, because if I'm this excited, I'm pretty sure they're pretty stoked as well. So Mainframe Comic-Con, let's give a really big welcome to the gentlemen, the creative team behind Canto, David M. Booher and Drew Zucker. Gentlemen, great to see you. How are you this evening?
We know it's all about him. So good. Thank you so much for having us. Drew, you made it.
Yeah, by the skin of my teeth.
You know, it's I don't know if everybody knows, but Drew's an EMT in the Bronx. So he's out there daily just saving the world.
Yeah. That's yeah.
I just posted a selfie that I gave myself a haircut, and you're out there like saving people's lives. So that's where we are.
Thanks for making it, guys. I greatly appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. I just came off of work as well. We're stepping up for Simpleman's Comics tonight. Unfortunately, they were called away on other business. So Brian and Jack, sorry you guys couldn't be here. Hopefully I can do you guys some justice. But we're here to talk about Canto. And for the uninitiated, if you haven't read Canto, you should, number one. Number two, Canto is a modern fairy tale of our own little tin warrior who loses his heart and has it replaced by a ticking clock with a specific amount of time, right? So this clock is ticking. At some point, it's going to end. But the real heart of Canto is this creative team here. So what I want to do here tonight is dive in. And my first question to you guys, let's talk to everybody out there. How did this creative team come together in the beginning? Where did you guys meet each other? Where did you guys, how did you further develop and become the team that you guys are today?
Well, I made the mistake of reaching out to Drew, and here we are.
It's true.
I'm just teasing.
Well, I've spoken like most people in my life.
That's not true. So, gosh, it was probably 3 years ago now, almost going on 3 years.
Around there.
I had a short that I was doing, and I love Drew's art. I came across him when he was doing The House with Philip Seavey, which was it's kickstarted.
Yeah.
The kickstarted book that they were doing on their own, which was gorgeous horror book. And I reached out to him on this short I was doing, and he wasn't available because he was working on the house, finishing that. And then when he was done, he sent me the fateful message, which was, "I'm finished. Let's talk about some more stuff." You might remember it even better than I do. And he sent me a sort of concept sketch that would eventually become Canto. And I have to tell you, within about half a second of seeing this, I was like, I don't know who this is or what the story is, but we're telling it for sure. That's how drawn I was to what he did, that even concept art.
Awesome. Now, you guys have a letterist, a colorist. Can we talk a little bit about the other members of the team that aren't here tonight that might be further away?
Sure.
Yeah.
And how you met them too.
So Vittorio Estone, who's our colorist, I met him through Tim Daniels, who I guess is the head designer at Vault is his official title now. But Tim is on his own probably the best designer in comics. But I did a Star Wars short story with him that he brought Vittorio in on. And Vittorio, I got the pages back I did for that with colors, and I was completely blown away. And I basically just kept Vittorio at the top of my list of, if I need a colorist, this is who I'm going to. And when it came time to do it for Canto, he was available, and he's stuck around for almost 12 issues of work now. So we've been more than happy to have him around.
Yeah, he's been great. The notes are so minor. When we give him an issue and he turns in pages that are colored, the notes that we have are such small tweaks that it's such a pleasure to be able to work with a team that you send material and they bring it back, and it's like, well, we're about 80-90% there. And Vittorio's like that. And then, of course, letterer extraordinaire Darren Bennett,
Eisner nominated.
also multiple Eisner nominee. He was nominated for an Eisner years ago, and then was nominated this past year for an Eisner Award for Best Letterer. And I think he ended up losing out to Stan Sakai for Usagi Yojimbo. So there's no shame in that at all. We've had a great pleasure of working with him. I think going forward, given his responsibilities, it's likely that we're going to be with his studio and world design with him supervising. So we've had a core team for the first story arc, for the first 6 issues. And I think going forward, you're going to see just a few little tweaks to that team. It's still going to be me, Drew, Vittorio, and Darren in a supervisory capacity. But we're going to keep this team together as long as we possibly can.
That's awesome. That's great to hear. Because when you read the first 6 issues, when you read that first arc, there's a notable color styling because of the emotions, because of what's happening. And I was incredibly lucky. I received an email the other day and was offered the opportunity to read an advanced copy
Drew?
of Canto II.
Did you do that?
Like, I have time to email anyone.
I may or may not have sent it your way.
Checking that out, going from that arc to this new arc, I'm not going to spoil the story, but the color helps set the mood. So that, I want to use that to transition into my next question is we're talking about characters that have much fewer facial amounts of facial construction than what we would normally deal with in comic books. And my next question is a bit broad, but if we can kind of go around the horn here and talk about it, is capturing emotion within the Cantoverse, if you will, and how you guys work to do that. I see it. I don't necessarily want to spoil it for the viewers because you got to buy the book, you got to read it. But I want to talk about how incredibly important and difficult it can be to capture emotion like that with a character that has about half of a face. It's kind of hard to smile when your face is tin.
A mask that covers your nose and mouth.
Excellent.
Live right now, but
yeah. So capturing emotion within the Canto and the Cantoverse. If you guys could touch base and kind of flesh that out for us, how you guys go about doing it, and how you really develop that.
Drew, take it.
When we did the initial design, it was designed very much on purpose that the facial grate would be of a design that if you shifted the angle of the camera and drew it correctly in perspective, you would actually develop essentially a smile out of it, or you would develop a frown out of it. So the design elements to it are very on purpose to work with getting what emotion we needed to out of the character. It's also why the eye ports are so big, is because that the two main ways that you're going to convey emotion with the character are the body language and the eyes. So to that end, it's really not the hardest thing in the world when, this is all I've kind of done for the last 10 years I've worked in comics, is how do you translate emotion out of a gesture? The book is just kind of the ultimate experiment of how well you can actually do that. And then you layer on top of it things like the colors and the lettering that Darren will do to it. And that just adds another layer to what we're doing on top of the script. But ultimately, it's very specific choices that were made in the design process from that original concept that David really insisted on driving before we even started drawing pages.
Yeah, and I watch all these different stories, and I worry sometimes, with his face almost fully covered, and you just have the eyes. And it's this marriage between, take The Mandalorian, which is a great example. We never see the Mandalorian's face, but we hear him talk. We understand the emotion that's happening. The child in The Mandalorian doesn't have any lines, and the subtle movements with the child with those big eyes, it's like you have all the emotion with those big eyes. And then I was watching a show I love, which is The Toys That Made Us.
Ooh.
And believe it or not, I watched all the episodes because I just love the way that things can go from literally nothing, an idea, to like worldwide, well-known franchises, all those sorts of things. And I watched the Hello Kitty episode, and the creator talked about how he specifically came to the design for this thing called kawaii, which is the cuteness with the big eyes and everything. And I think with Mandalorian out there, things like Hello Kitty out there, marrying those together in Canto, I think really has helped us convey the emotion, the story beats, the feelings, the emotions from the reader that I think we really, really were shooting for in every single panel. And we still shoot for that. We still try our best with just those eyes and, the angle of their face to really convey the emotions.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Excellent. At the end of the day, chefs say this a lot. We eat with our eyes, right? Well, you look at cover 1 of Canto. Those eyes draw you in. You see some concern. You see some adventure. You see some passion. The eyes draw you in. The colors and the cover sell you. The writing is what delivers it too.
Right? It's funny, that first cover, we had a different cover on the pitch, and it was kind of like, what was it, Dunkirk, Drew?
Yeah, the Dunkirk.
Do you remember the Dunkirk? There was a poster where all the soldiers are looking away from the viewer, and then just the main characters looking back toward you. We had a Dunkirk cover that was like that. All the tins were looking away, and then Canto was looking at you. And we got together and we made a very specific choice. And we said, look, we've got to introduce this character. And so that's where that first cover came from. It's not really a story cover in the sense that it's not really telling you much of anything, except this is a character that we're going to be following in the story. And I think that was a great choice that we made, because you see now that everybody knows that that's that first print, Canto #1, just because of that cover image.
Yep.
Not to get too much into your world, Andy.
No, it's man. Like I said, that cover, the eyes draw you in, the cover sells it, but the writing helps to capitalize and finalize that. So, David, when it comes to the writing of Canto, what goes into crafting the writing in a way that helps deliver what Drew's delivering, or capitalizes or finishes capitalizing on what Drew delivers when it comes to emotion? Like, do you find yourself writing something and then having to redo it based on the artwork sometimes?
Yeah, I'll go back in. Drew's laughing. We've had some.
I just change stuff as I'm drawing. He turns in a script, he gets it back and goes, "This isn't what I wrote."
Yeah, what's going on? No, there was actually a moment, I think it was yesterday, we were talking about a page, and I realized it's a double page spread, and I realized, well, I'm going to have to adjust the dialogue for it, but it's great. The page that he sent me is great, so I'm like, I will adjust the dialogue if I have to, because I don't want to, slow down the progress that we're making on all these pages. And 2, why reinvent the wheel if we've got a beautiful page there? It's like, it's a little bit of the Marvel method at that point of scripting, where you just have an idea and you let the artist sort of do the panel layouts and, the camera angles and all those sorts of things. And then you come back and you do the dialogue. Every once in a while, Drew will send something back, and maybe it's overlook something in the script, or, just a different way to look at it. I'm fine with going back to do the dialogue to adjust it to the art. But to be honest, I think that is probably 10% or less of our process. I mean, I think what we do in the scripts is fairly close to what ends up on the page with minor adjustments. And the way I approach scripts is, it's a hard question, but at the end of the day, it's about Canto is a. So let me just say it this way: Canto is a comic. Canto is a character that I love dearly. I will fight to the death to defend Canto as a character. I love this comic. I love this story. It's what I love about comics. And so when I'm scripting, it's a lot of, well, what do I want to see as a fan?
Mm-hmm.
Do I want to see Canto just going out there? You read the first issue of Canto II. Do I want to see Canto just comfortably adjusting to being the leader of all of these people? Well, no, that's not the Canto we know. The Canto we know is going to be the crown is going to be very heavy for him. And he's constantly going to be second guessing himself. And that's the Canto that I want to see. So that's the approach that I take in scripting. There's always the reluctance, always the desire, the drive to do what's right. And so that's how I approach it. And I think Drew, probably you can speak to it. I'm sure you approach it a similar way.
Yeah. I mean, as far as scripts go, David's scripts are not quite Marvel method, but relatively detailed. Like there are panel breakdowns per page. And for me personally, it's one of those things where I like to tell him, give me everything so I can decide what I want to keep and what I want to throw out. Because ultimately, I'm not going to do anything that's going to change the story. If I have story concerns, I'll go to him early on and we'll talk through that stuff. But as far as once I have the finished script, it's how do I best serve what are sometimes extraordinarily complex actions, but are completely necessary for the story. It sometimes needs more panels than what he's allotted me. It sometimes needs less panels, so things will get combined. But ultimately, that script is, unless that script is like perfect in the spine, for me, I'm not going to be able to do anything with it. So luckily, he always gives me a good base to work out of, and then we just kind of branch off here and there and go to the end.
And by no means is my question working to downplay one versus the other. What I wanted to highlight for the viewers and for the people that haven't been able to read Canto yet is the incredible balance that you guys have found as a team to deliver that emotion and deliver that artwork. And I see when you talk about Canto, I see you well up with emotions and pride. So moving forward, what I want to talk about is kind of a general question to you guys going around the horn here. Are you guys aware of the impact that the content and the Cantoverse that you've created? Are you aware of the impact on people and how it's received as far as a broader audience? Like you guys have talked about in past panels of walking to comic book stores and not seeing a copy available. So there's that.
You know, it's always super gratifying to see that there's no copies in comic shops, but it's also a double-edged sword because it's like, you know, how do we get new readers if all of the books are gone? So we're happy to be at a stage where we have a trade out. It's such a hard question, right? So I don't want to say. I mean, if we say yes, we know what the impact is. It sounds like we're, we're just sort of tooting our own horn. And if you say no, we don't, it's kind of like, well, what?
Oh.
So what
I'm saying
is we have definitely gotten these messages that have been extreme. I mean, they bring me to tears. And it's hard to talk about them because when that issue 1 came out, we got messages about people with medical conditions and just feeling like they weren't whole. And then there's a story about somebody who does something extraordinary who isn't whole by design. And so, yeah, I think I'll just say that there clearly has been some impact, and we're absolutely just beside ourselves about that with excitement, and it's reflected in how Canto II has done already before release. We have grown the audience, fortunately for us, quite a bit. So
I would also say when we did that first volume, it went over our heads, I think, until San Diego, when we went and did a signing at IDW. I think Walt Simonson was signing next to us, and Gabe Rodriguez and Joe Hill were signing before us, and we were like, okay, yeah, maybe like there'll be like 5 people online, and 3 of them are going to be like, "Are you Joe Hill and Gabe Rodriguez?" And then we got there to sign, and the line was around the booth. And that was the moment that we kind of realized, oh, I guess this kind of had an impact on people. Because for us, we very much can't see the forest for the trees 90% of the time, because it's just me and him working. You get the good reviews and all that, but even then, it's like you're not 100% sure how it's translating to the world. And for us personally, at least for me, when I started off with the initial idea of Canto, it was created very much in mind with this idea of, I want to make a book that brings new readers to the industry. I want to make a book that sells for the retailers, because I'm tired of seeing them sit around with product on their shelves and it not moving. I love this industry. I want this industry to grow in a healthy way, and not just the way it did in the 90s with the boom. And I wanted to be able to challenge myself to make a book that my friends who are beginning to have kids could sit down with their kids and enjoy that book as much as they did, that they enjoyed it as much as their kids did. I would say going forward, like with what we've seen already with Clockwork Fairies and Canto II, I think we've achieved it. There's certainly room for us to grow, and I think that's the ambition for both of us. But we're beginning to get a sense of it in the best way possible.
Okay.
It's always been. I mean, our whole story has been so reflective of Canto's story, where he's this little tiny character just standing up to a great big world out there. And since March of 2019, when we first announced this story and this character, it's just been like, hey, look, take a look, read it. We know you're going to love it. And it's just almost hand selling every single person on it, to the point where now people are aware of it, and they'll pick up the new story arc and keep going with it. But it's just constant. I don't know. I think there's this sense out there that Drew and I are just like wildly successful with this. And the reality is, it is just a grind every single day to produce the comic, to promote the comic, to get it into shops, to talk to
it is 2 full-time jobs just to do this. And we do it because we love it. I spend 16 hours a day on my days off drawing, because I've seen how much this book means to people. And I don't want them to ever feel like they got let down by what we did going forward.
Interesting. You guys are giving me goosebumps. You guys are really giving me goosebumps. I'm going to take a quick moment to compare an apple to an orange, so to speak. You made some incredible points and brought up some very, very passionate things, bringing new readers into comic books, taking care of the stores, giving them something that they can move and they can sell. This is where Canto resides with me as a comic book reader and as a collector. There's only one other story that I'm this passionate about that I read, and that's Saga.
It's Canto II.
Well, it's a very I hate to compare apples and oranges, but when it comes to something that you're passionate about, that resonates with me as a reader and a collector, it's Saga,
yeah,
and it's Canto.
My God.
Canto is this modern fairy tale.
No,
now.
I have goosebumps.
Yeah, really. That's a hell of a comparison.
It's two different styles of storytelling and two different styles of art. So it's really kind of hard to. But when it comes to reading a book and collecting a book and having that story reside inside of you, and really play a role in your life, it sits there. It sits there with my saga stuff as a collection, as a book that I read, and I was incredibly honored when I was afforded the opportunity to read Canto II. Before we jump to that really quick, I do kind of want to ask about the Clockwork Fairies and that being a one shot. Where and how did that come about, and where did that? Was there publishing delays that got you guys to? You wanted to put something out for them to kind of bridge that gap until you could get to Canto II, because it was a fantastic story and I was kind of left wanting more. And I felt like, at the end of the day, it was kind of like a pebble in the stream to get me to the other side, so to speak.
I think David can probably reconfirm this. I may have it backwards a little bit.
I would never undercut you on live.
No, never. You just throw me under the bus. So the original idea before COVID ended the world was that Clockwork Fairies was going to come out in May, and then Canto II was going to come out in July, I believe. Okay. So the idea was, at the end of Volume 1, we felt like we could condense the main story down to 5 issues, and if anything else, have a tighter narrative for it, which afforded us the opportunity to go off, and David likes to call it, explore a side quest of Canto's world. And I like the idea because we were going to have a gap between Volume 1 and Volume 2. This was a nice way to create a palate cleanser, to bring in new readers, and to remind readers from Volume 1, hey, we're still around, we're coming back, we're at least giving you guys something in the in-between. So that was really where that was born out of. And it just kind of really worked out that we liked telling the side story, because it gave us a chance to just add more flavor to Canto's world.
Just shout out to Simple Man's Comics. He's on right now.
Brian?
Yeah, Brian's on. So my goal with Canto and the Clockwork Fairies was to demonstrate that although we had this linear storyline with Canto #1, If I Only Had a Heart, Canto, the heart of Canto is the character as much as it is the story. And so if we can do a single issue with a cool little story, it was 22 pages and it's not that involved and it's super linear and it's just something that you pick up 10, 15, 20 minutes, you read it and you realize, oh, wow. So Canto can we can put him anywhere in his world and we can give him any sort of story or quest or task, and he's going to be able to go out and do it. So that was my big goal, was to tell a side quest story that shows that Canto is the character that you want to follow, regardless of the story that we end up telling at the end of the day. And I saw there was a question from Coffee and Heroes. Big shout out to them. They're absolutely amazing shop. Yep. Super supportive of Canto, and I think they're the ones that have a original.
They have one of the Volume 1 pages.
Yeah. So I think they asked about future storylines. I love what we've done, which is an arc, single, one shot arc, one shot. I think we're going to be able, we've been preliminarily talking, and since we're live and the world's ending and I just don't care anymore, I'm going to reveal some behind the scenes stuff that we've been talking about. There's at least, we would like to tell at least 2 more story arcs after Hollow Men. And I won't reveal too much, but the next one is likely going to be called Lionhearted. So Canto 3, Lionhearted. And if you start to see the theme, we had If I Only Had a Heart.
Yeah.
We had the Hollow Men. If you see the solicits for the second issue, you'll see that there's something on the cover of the second issue that really might tie into a little story we like to call Wizard of Oz.
No one's ever heard of it.
No one's ever heard of it. And then the third arc, we'd like to call Lionhearted, sort of to tie it all in. And then there's a fourth arc that I won't reveal anything about, but that by no means ends Canto's adventures. There might be this story cycle, like a big Lord of the Rings type story cycle, but then I think we got the Hobbit in us if everybody keeps going along.
Yeah.
And, more quests. So that's sort of where we're going with it. But it all depends on whether or not, the readers continue to be with us for this journey.
Oh, you guys kind of answered one of my next questions about where this Cantoverse might be. And I had a target year date on there, but I'm not going to mention where
it would start with a 2100.
Well, it's just like where would where do you guys envision the Cantoverse in 5 years time? And you kind of laid out a really good roadmap there for the next couple of years. So we'll leave it at that right there, because that's exciting. You're giving me goosebumps.
My wish is to have Lionhearted come out in 2021, the final arc for the Canto cycle, this cycle to come out in 2022. Yeah. And then, man, if we can keep it going and if readers really like it, we haven't even approached IDW about this, but again, the world's on the cusp of apocalypse, so let's do it. I would love to see after this is all over, I would love to see an ongoing.
Okay, you're giving me goosebumps. So that was kind of one of my questions, kind of bubble wrapped in there together a little bit with some other answers. But Drew, really good point. We're talking about Coffee and Heroes and an original page they have. You have original art available from Canto.
Yes.
I've been peeping it. I've been looking at it the last couple of days. I found it a few months ago, and I stepped back and I looked again today or yesterday, and I was like, oh man, there are some double page spreads in there that available that are to die for, and that kind of leads me back to Canto II, the Hollow Men. There is some very impressive double page spreads in that read. And what I want to touch bases on a little bit is that you're able to deliver that in art and story on a double page. But what a lot of people might not know quite yet, you guys have done a very amazing job of bridging the gap between a comic in the hand and a digital comic. Mm-hmm. So this is kind of like, I don't really have a question here, but something I want to touch bases on and kind of get your guys' opinion on. There are a lot of amazing comic books out there that don't read quite well digitally, and there's a lot of amazing digital reads that don't quite read well on paper. Canto reads amazingly well on both. So I kind of want to know, is that something you guys planned for? Is it just kind of coming together? Is it just kind of fitting with the way your guys' team works together?
I don't really look at the digital. Do you, Drew?
I do, because that's how I read kind of on a daily basis. It's not something I consider when I'm doing it. It's the end result of that. The person who mentored me, which was Tom Lyle, beat storytelling into me nonstop. That was his preach from when I was a freshman in college to the day I left, and then after I left, whenever I would see him at cons, I would get browbeat about storytelling, and making sure that storytelling is clear. If you can find a way to make the page really cool, awesome, even better. But storytelling is the primary thing that we're looking to do. As far as the digital stuff goes, I think it reads well just because it's mostly paneled. There isn't a ton of crazy page-breaking stuff with this book. It's something I'm exploring a little bit more these days, but it's not anything that I would be comfortable personally going so wild with that it just ruins the reading experience for somebody because of the format they're reading in.
Okay. And I know that's kind of like an art heavy question. Sorry, David.
How
But-
dare
at the end of the day, my personal opinion is that comic books and the content that you guys create are what's saving print media, and will continue to save print media going forward well down the line. So it's just amazing to see a creation such as this bridge the gap and be successful in both arenas, in my opinion. So we talked. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, it's the idea of the shops and having print media. The things that are happening with DC going to another distributor and then cutting their single issue lines very recently. I think it was this last week. Just to all the indie creators out there, this is really the opportunity to provide the good sellable content that shops need to put on their shelves. Because if they're stocking 70% Marvel and DC and 30% indie, and then they lose DC, which is 35%, they've basically doubled the indie content that they can bring on. So, my advice is it's hard to say just go create something that's successful, because who knows what that is. But get the shops excited for what you're doing. Create characters. That's another. This is me and my soapbox. But we've seen so many, and there's announcements almost daily. So many stories that are premise stories. It's like
Also,
DC were not built in the 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s on premise stories. They were built on characters. Build a character that you can tell 100 stories with. Don't build a premise that you're going to have to fill with 100 characters.
Also, don't steal from each other. The thing I've noticed is a lot of people tend to make an elevator pitch that it's like this book and this book. No.
It's Walking Dead, but a comic.
Exactly. Walking Dead is a success already. You don't need to copy that. Dig a little deeper for where you want your influences to come from.
Find a good artist. I don't know where you are on your screen, but
there you go. You figured it out.
Man, that's a great segue in. I was kind of interested in what your guys' take is currently with our current world situation with the DC split from Diamond. On your guys' opinion on what that does to the industry moving forward. Is that something that creates more opportunities, or is it something that creates more strife?
Both.
Okay.
Drew, you have some opinion.
With some of the shops, being fully aware that I have friends who own shops who I know are not happy with it. I personally think it's a good thing. I think it was a Band-Aid that was going to be ripped off eventually. And it's not, I understand everybody's trepidation. I don't think it's a bad thing for indie creators to have a moment for their voices to be amplified a little bit. And what's happening over at DC is kind of, while it's upsetting, people are losing their jobs. It's sort of a natural thing that companies go through. I don't think it by any means, hails the destruction of comics or DC by any means. I think this is unfortunately a result of the world as it is right now and of the industry kind of going through natural evolutions.
Yeah, I think there's an opportunity from our perspective. Like I said, there's an opportunity to get to shops to sell books. I mean, we saw Drew has sold more of The House, which is the book before Canto, during COVID than during the months of COVID than for the entire life of the book.
Right.
And so it's just shops needed content. And, with the exit of DC and some shops not stocking DC, yes, they're going to lose the hundreds of thousands of single issue sales from Batman, but take on 10 indie comics that sell 10,000 a piece.
Yeah. take a chance on something, and that's how you find Walking Dead or the next Walking Dead. I've said it for a long time that as far as other media goes, comics is not just superheroes, and that's kind of what's been infuriating. But in the last few years, this has become a little more of a reality. Is that there are really great stories. Some of the best fiction of the last 20 years is in comics, and that you want something like a Vertigo to come back and to be able to create that content again.
Yeah, that's amazing. You bring up a really good point that I've forgotten to circle around to earlier, and that's kind of like bridging the gap between video games and comic books a little bit. You look back 30 plus years ago now. I'm dating myself. And you called it a side quest. The Clockwork Fairies, a side quest. I absolutely love that. And I'm really looking forward to more Canto side quests. Because you look back when a number of us were growing up, and like you said, some of the best comic books out there aren't even about superheroes. Some of the greatest stories told have nothing to do with superheroes, and I think the industry kind of lost sight of that for a long while. And I think that it's coming back around. It really has. I think
there's also such a huge amount of content out there. So if I was a shop owner, and getting that previews catalog every month that's this thick, it's like, yes, I understand as a shop owner that there's more than just superhero comic books out there, but man, if I put Batman or Spider-Man on my wall, it's gonna sell like crazy. So indie creators have to find a way to cut through all the indie content out there and also be like a Spider-Man, like a Batman on the shelf. And it's alchemy. A lot of the time it's alchemy, but just make the best that you can and then bust your butt getting it out there.
Go ahead, Drew.
Yeah, I mean, it's a grind. We have invested a good chunk of our own money into this book. And like I said, we're both putting a lot of time into this. It's not just on the writing and the drawing end. We are constantly doing press. We're constantly on the socials, promoting this. We have personal relationships with shops. I have a personal relationship with all the shops in my area that I go to them and I check on them and make sure that they're getting what they need. Or I we'll reach out to shops that like Coffee and Heroes, who we now have a personal relationship with. That kind of outreach just goes a long way, especially when you consider these guys have hundreds of books that they have to sift through a month. You want yourself to stand out, you have to kind of make yourself stand out.
Yep. And this comment all day long. Canto, as both a title and a character, represents hope. This stands out right now, more so than ever. It stood out before. It stands out more so now than ever. Coffee and Heroes. That's an epic comment. It really is an epic comment. You're giving me goosebumps. I need a better camera to show you the goosebumps I'm getting.
Well, you know what? Let me add to this conversation, which is there's also another aspect of this, which is Andy, it's you, and it's Simple Man Comics, and it's all these other places that are out there and just looking for books. Yes, there's an investment. I hate to use the word speculator, but there's an investment aspect to it. But it's also, you guys are out there identifying potentially attractive books before they're on the shelves. And we've seen it over and over for the last year since Canto came out, and Canto II as well, which is the comics investment community getting behind these indie books and saying, we think there's value here. And whether that's value based on because it's a physical comic book and that's comic book investing, if it's the story, if it's the cover, whatever it is, that buzz starts. And then you see that it starts to spill over into, comics readers and Wednesday Warriors, and then you see it spill over into shops, and so that aspect of the comics community is also, I think, incredibly important to getting books, to cut through the chatter. So if you are indie creators out there, befriend Andy. Simple Man's Comics, Andy. These folks, they know good stuff, and they wouldn't invest in these books if you didn't think there was value there.
I owe a lot to Brian and Jack for bringing awareness to Canto in that previews catalog. Brian and Jack are like,
my favorite story. Go ahead. What were you gonna say? I'll tell you my favorite story about Brian and Jack, but
just them bringing awareness to it. And I remember the chat that day, and Jack and Brian are like, "You're gonna want to read this. You're not gonna want to miss out."
Do you remember that first podcast we were on with Simple Man's Comics, Brian and Jack?
Yeah.
So they scheduled us to be on, and they didn't know anything about the book. They thought it looked cool. Looks really cool, right? And I think it was a day or 2 days before we were supposed to go on the podcast. I actually sent them a PDF of the first issue because I thought, this would be strange to go on the podcast and talk about a book that they haven't really read yet. And they afterward they read it, and they thought, and they told us, "Oh my gosh, it's actually good." We got a lot of those comments, which is, you pick up a book and you think it looks really cool, and then the story doesn't really live up to the cover, or your hopes for it. And it was just a funny moment for us, whether they sort of were surprised. Oh, this is actually a really good book.
That first interview with them was also probably one of our favorite interviews we've done, because I think it accidentally lasted like 2 hours.
Sure, love it.
It was a long one. That's a great story. It's kind of heartwarming because I do remember some of those discussions, and I do remember you better get this on your pull list. You better get this book now and read it. You're gonna love it. And so I owe a great deal of gratitude to them for bringing awareness to that book, so that I didn't miss out, because at the end of the day, those copies are hard to find right now. They truly are, which is why I'm so thankful for the trade paperback and the digital available. So, because I'll admit, as a completionist collector, not only do I want to own physical copies, I read my physical copies as soon as I get them, because I can't wait like everybody else. But at the end of the day, they do get tucked away, and I do utilize the digital method, and I do utilize the trade paperbacks, because my mood changes, and sometimes I gotta have paper in my hand, and sometimes it's a convenience factor for digital. So I digress a little bit here, but I do owe them a great deal of gratitude for bringing awareness to that.
And I am very proud I'm very proud of the fact that they took a chance on Canto because they thought it looked cool, and then we were able to step up with the story, and for them at least, and reinforce why they thought it looked so cool, and why they took a chance on it. Because that's the worst feeling, is when somebody takes a chance on something and they realize that it's not as good as they hoped or thought.
Yeah.
So I'm just really thankful that we were able to hold up our end of the bargain, which is to make it a comic that 14 months. It's been 14 months since that first issue came out. Wow. And it's been this, as far as the value of that first issue, it's been sort of a roller coaster, right? Up and down. And I just love these comments of some folks who are like, I saw one the other day. You probably saw it too, Andy, where somebody's Canto #1 from 12 months ago made it on a top 10 of like the hottest comics. And the description for it was only a question. It said, "Did anybody else think this was already going to peak a year ago?" And I just love proving those comments wrong. Let's just keep it going.
Oh, yeah. I thought you meant it was gonna reach a level of like heightened awareness and like a firestorm. Sorry, I misheard that. But yeah,
No, I what they meant was by July of 2019, 1 month after its release, get that little bump, that goose, and then it's going to be back down like $5. It's like, man, if you have a stack of Canto #1s for $5, I'll write you a check right now.
Yeah. We've been going for quite a while here. So before I move too far away from Canto, the heart of our story, no pun intended, what is from that first story arc? Because I don't want to spoil the second story arc. Go out and order the second story arc coming up, Canto II. Go order it now. FOC was last Monday. Get that book on your pull list. So please, you're not going to want to miss out on that. So first story arc from you guys, what is your favorite scene? If you had to pick one scene from the first story arc, what is it, please?
You know what? Can I add a little thing to your question?
Yes.
Should we pick what we think the other one's favorite moments are?
Yeah, sure. Go for it. I don't know. I feel no, never mind. No,
I think you know which my favorite. What my favorite? What's that?
I think I know which is your favorite.
No, I say that, and now I can't think of what.
No. I've got it. I'm right, even if you tell me I'm wrong.
No, your favorite.
You could try to guess it.
I think it was the last page of issue 6 when you got to put your pen down.
Oh, it isn't. But yeah, that was a great feeling when that was done.
You guess mine.
I'm pretty sure yours is when the Malrex comes back.
Oh, 100
campfire.
Do you know which one that is, Andy?
I just reread the first arc yesterday, and I can't remember.
Issue 2.
Oh, in the forest, yeah. And then he's peeking through the forest. He peeks. Yes.
Yep.
By the campfire.
So we hopefully anybody listening has read it. If not, I'll tell you real quick. Canto's out in the forest, and there's these creatures, the Malrex. The young ones want to eat the tins. The older ones know that they're not good as food anymore. So the young ones attack Canto, and he fights it back. And then this older one he met earlier attacks the younger ones and defends Canto. And you think, I hope as a reader, you look at that and you're like, oh, great, now he's going to have a companion. And the older Malrex just walks away. And Canto has this little quiet line where he says, where are you going? What if they come back? And then he has to bed down for the night by himself next to a campfire. And as he's asleep, the older Malrex comes through the woods, comes back, and just curls up around Canto protectively and just sleeps the night there. And I remember specifically that moment of scripting that scene. And I was going to have them come together. And I thought, I'm just going to withhold this from the reader for just one more beat. And I think, that's my favorite scene. That's my favorite scene. I love the end. I love issue 6, but I love that scene.
I fell for it. I fell for it because it was like, oh man, he's really taken off. And my favorite part was you delivered to the reader that Canto had never seen the forest before. And
when he wakes up in the morning and he's like,
he was on the edge of that forest. He wakes up, and it's when the Malrex comes back, and he's got the leaves and the brush stuck on the side of him, and Canto picks it up, and I think if I remember correctly, he says it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the shafts of sunlight in that one panel are coming down on him.
Right.
And we did I don't mean to monopolize the conversation, Drew. I just love this so much. We specifically, Drew, you picked that perspective on that specifically for that reason.
There was a different page for that originally. And I think I drew half the page, and it wasn't working, and I went back and started it over.
When it was about perspective, and Canto's this tiny little character in this big, beautiful tree with the sunlight coming down on him, and it's just a moment for you to feel what Canto feels, which is there is an enormous world out there that I just am experiencing now for the very first time.
Well, you know what was truly epic about that scene, and that's my favorite scene, is when he holds that portion of brush or that leaf. I believe it's more in tune with being a leaf. You guys delivered a level of importance that made that piece, that leaf, as important and almost more important than all of the rocks that he was collecting for his love.
Right.
I mean, that right there, that right there was up there. That delivered a level of importance to what was happening with Canto and what was happening in that world right there. Because originally, when I first read it, my favorite scene or my favorite panel or my favorite page was when the Malrax attacks the soulless witches, where he jumps on that one. Because you get a 180. You get a 180 of he might be lovable, he might be cuddly, but he is here to just destroy stuff when you need him to destroy stuff.
That's, I mean, that was absolutely by design. We originally, one of the early concepts was a very small creature like Toto.
Originally smaller than Canto.
Wow.
And we play with size so much, size difference. So you have Canto and the Giants, you have Canto and the Furies, Canto and the Malarax. We picked the fairies and the Clockwork Fairies specifically to show, to flip that, concept on its head. That Canto's tiny in this world, but there are creatures tinier than him. So that size difference that creates a new dynamic, right? You've got this lion bear of a Malarax in Canto who's gonna defend Canto until his very last breath. And you read this Canto too. You know it's good. You know what's coming.
That's why I'm telling people to make sure they get it on their pull lists.
What's your favorite, Drew? I'm drawing a blank.
I love the Giants.
Oh yes, of course.
The Giants kill me. Only for no other reason than it's so hard to do comedy in comics. And when I read that script, I remember actively laughing at it and being like, "Oh God, David's actually a really good writer."
He's like, "I hate you, I hate you, I hate you," and then an LOL when he reads issue 4 script. And I hate you, I hate you.
That was another
really good part. 70 feet tall against something that's 3. It's not fun.
Yeah. So if folks are really digging the Giants, they may or may not be coming back.
Oh my. Oh, nice. I really did enjoy that part. I'm glad you guys brought that up. We would need another to touch base on everything. You'd almost have to go page by page with this book with you guys to really do it justice because of how amazing it is. So we're approaching that hour mark, and I do have a couple of fun questions at the end here that I was really interested in. That hour mark is, we saved the best for last. We really did. We're not done until you guys kick me off.
So there's a panel after us? No, I'm just kidding.
No, there's not.
Hey, Chad.
It's just you. Like,
I know, I'm teasing. He said,
I was like, I literally looked at the schedule and I was like, oh no, please don't be one because I'm starting to get nervous.
No.
We literally positioned you guys to be the close out our show. So thank you so much for coming. I'm going to join you guys later. Sorry.
Yes.
I think Drew had written in an email to you guys that we could talk as long as you need us to. So
yeah,
it's true. We'll go on forever if you let us.
Yep.
And I appreciate that. They really did save the best panel for last, in my opinion. So we've touched base quite a bit on Canto, the heart of Canto, and the creative team of Canto. What I'm curious about is you guys a little bit more. So my next question is when you guys are not working on Canto, what are some of your favorite hobbies?
Hobbies? What are hobbies?
I know I feel bad for writing the word hobbies because I'm like, well, I don't even really have time for hobbies.
I mean, I have a day job too, full-time job as a lawyer, believe it or not. So it's day job writing, and that's pretty much. I watch a lot of TV.
Yeah,
I read a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, that question kind of did fall a little on the short end after I wrote it, and then I read it again, sitting here. I'm like, ooh, yeah, it's hard to have hobbies as an adult. You really.
Well, we used to run half marathons. We ran the LA Marathon, my husband and I. So before COVID, we were able to do that. Yeah.
David, I think you'll agree with this. I mean, I'm lucky. You know, drawing is what I love to do, so I get to combine my hobby with my half job. Let's call it.
Yeah.
My sort of job.
I feel the same way about writing. So I would write as a hobby if I couldn't do it as a, as a pro getting paid for it. So that's what I would do.
Okay. And
Andy, what are your hobbies?
That was kind of a terrible question to ask, and I'm sitting here. I'm like, it's hard to have hobbies as an adult. Everywhere around me. I am a little silly at that because I'll go to the LCS and I'll get my pickups, but a lot of times, like many other adults with full-time jobs, they kind of do stack up over time. Canto has never stacked up for me though.
Yes.
So I can't wait for this next book to come out. I really can't. So speaking of comic books a little bit, I'm really interested in this question. This kind of seems a little bit out there. If you guys had to build your own team of comic book characters or superheroes, what would be your top 5 picks? And why?
Wow,
two.
All ages.
I don't know. That's a tough question. I mean, I don't really read a lot of the, what's that?
Canto should be your first pick.
Well, yeah, read Canto II, and there's your team right there.
Yeah, really.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Well, TMNT and Splinter. How about that?
Ooh. I'm sold right there.
I will go with the Locke family.
Oh, really?
Oh, man.
I will see you TMNT and raise you Locke family.
Well, I'm going to get bonus of Usagi Yojimbo. We're going to be IDW loyalists till the end of time. And that's it.
Very cool. Very cool. So how did that relation? That's actually a good segue. How did that relationship develop with IDW?
I waltzed into their offices. I threw the pitch down on the desk, and I was like, "You guys are doing this." And Ryle was there at the time, and he said, "I guess we're doing this."
Was that something like a typical sales pitch? Is it something where you have to just get there and go to them and be like, "Hey"?
Escorted out by security right after that.
And 2 years later, after the dust had settled, no, I'm just teasing. We put together a really, I think, buttoned up pitch for Canto. We had this really cool document that had, and I would love to one day do a panel or a class or something on how to pitch an indie comic, because I think we found a lot of success with this format, and I do this now for everything. A cover page, and then we had, because it was an all ages like fairy tale, we had like parchment design on the pages. Put a couple of quotes from Dante's Inferno and Wizard of Oz in the first page, and a little silhouette of Canto, because that's another big thing about character design. You got to be able to tell who the character is from the silhouette alone, and that's an animation technique when you're looking at animated shows and that sort of thing. Described the worlds, stylized art and margins. Then we added fully inked, colored, and lettered pages, first 6 pages, and then we had a full script. And we sent it over there. Got our foot in the door from our very close friend Ben Bishop, who had been doing TMNT work over there. He introduced us to an editor, and I always like to tell the story. I was like, "We know an editor. We are golden." And he emailed us back and said, "Oh, great. I'll send it over to the committee with everything else." It's like, man, we got put in the wood chipper anyway.
Yeah.
So I pictured it, a wood chipper. All the pitches go in and just chips come out. But the which is the good thing about it is the material ended up standing on its own, and they took a chance. They didn't know if it was going to be successful, and they've said that multiple times. They didn't know they liked it, didn't know it was going to happen. We didn't either.
Yeah, we hoped, we believed in it. We figured even if it didn't sell well, we were kind of like, we'll keep going with it.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
We plan to.
I feel like IDW is that perfect vehicle for Canto. I really do.
It strikes me. I feel it feels to me like it's one of the Hasbro licensed properties, but playing in the sandbox of like Lock and Key and some of the other Joe Hill books that are there that are more horror like. It's like living in both those worlds, and so I think it's a great fit.
It's a great point. Yeah, because at the end of the day, there's a lot of indie titles out there now, or a lot of indie publishers out there now. I shall say a lot more than there ever had been. And it makes you kind of wonder how things would have been if he had gone with a different one. But like I said, I think IDW is the perfect vehicle for Canto. So how long did it take for them to get back to you guys?
Quick, actually.
Be careful. Oh, I'm just kidding.
Quick-ish.
No, I think it was a couple of months. It had to go through the process, and then
it was, I think, like 2-3 months. Once they had made up their mind on it, it went pretty quickly. At that point, we had already been drawing because we had decided, like I said, we decided to move forward with or without anyone. So by the time they came along, we were already done with issue 1, I think.
Okay.
Oh yeah, we had all the inks for issue 1 completed. We were starting on issue 2. The scripts were locked for the first, I think, 3 or 4. I mean, locked in the sense that if an editor came in and gave us notes, we'd do that. But we had the scripts written. We were full steam ahead. We were actually talking to somebody else about publishing it. And then we got the email a couple months after we had sent it over there that they were into it. We just tried to not lose our minds.
Very cool. Don't hesitate to shut me down if some of these questions are loaded. They're not intended to be, but it's just very interesting. Your first response was like, well, maybe that was a little hot topic there that shouldn't be talked about. But it's just interesting because of the reception and how I'll say how well the book has done since it first come out. That when you look at it, it really makes you wonder from a publisher standpoint about what were they doing and feeling in that room when they're sitting and reading that book? Because I know what I was doing and feeling when I first read that the first story and the second first and second issue. So
I mean, we weren't in the room, so
right.
I have a sense based on conversations and things that they had they connected in the sort of emotional way that readers have, and the question. It was brand new at the time. The question for them, and I totally get this from their perspective, is can they replicate this with not replicate in other issues, but if we publish this issue number 1, will that feeling be replicated for readers? Are we just feeling that way?
Yeah.
Is that something other people are going to feel? And that's where the chance comes into it. And I think we're all very thankful they took the chance to put it out there and give readers the opportunity to respond to it in one way or the other. Because other times it doesn't work. It doesn't work. You can feel one way about it, and it just doesn't connect with readers. And so, I think that's where we were there too. Don't you think, Drew?
I think we filled a niche for them also. It is not by accident that the story took the direction that it took. At least from my end, there was a very active look at what the industry was publishing at the time, and we both agree, yes, there is a lot of fantasy out there. it's also a lot of violent fantasy and adult fantasy, and there's a lot of sci-fi out there. We looked at what was missing from the industry as a whole, and we're like, okay, we'll fill that niche, and we've obviously done pretty well at doing that. So that amount of research, I think, served us very well.
And we honestly, from my perspective, and I think Drew, you agree with this, we made the comic that we want to read. That we were passionate about. It's like, we would be Wednesday Warriors for Canto, even if we weren't the creators, because it's just so different and interesting. And it just feels like something there's not a lot of it out there. It's either kids stuff or adult stuff. There's, Dark Crystal, Neverending Story, Return to Oz, Willow, all of those stories that I loved when I was growing up. I just wanted that again.
And that's where this really falls into my heart. The Cantoverse falls, it bridges a gap, right?
I love that you call it Cantoverse.
Yeah, I'm going to start using it.
It really is. I got hope it's going to be there, and it's going to continue to be built and be a thing. Like you talk about the side quests and you talk about the story arcs. It's Cantoverse. It really is. You're on your way there. But at the end of the day, it bridges a gap. I have a 3.5-year-old son right now who I love reading stories to every night. But this is that next evolution of a story that I could sit down and read with him before we move into The Hobbit or The Lord of the Rings. Some heady or heavy text and type that's difficult and takes a lot of time. But this is going to live with my son. This is what my son is going to grow up with. That's why this is so important to me. Is it resonates with me, but it's going to resonate with him as well. And he's only beginning at life.
So Andy, can one of my dreams is to have a kid cosplay Canto. I'm not saying it has to be your son, but
we gotta find a way to make that happen. That would be pretty
little cardboard armor.
Yeah.
Little face.
So I think I can make that happen.
Can you make the con start first and then the cosplay second?
Yes.
I definitely think I can make that happen for you. I know I can make it. So
I would weep. I would cry. You'd see me cry, Chad.
We're doing another con in October. Surprise. You guys are going to get another invite. Is that cool?
Oh, yes.
It's not happening. So what?
Why not, right?
Right.
So it's actually going to be a horror themed. So a little robot would be kind of cool.
With my other handsome writer.
But we've got some special effects artists. I think we might be able to get a Canto.
That would be amazing.
I would just.
So where I live,
you'd see me weep.
I live not far from the Douglas School of Art, which is the Tom Savini makeup school, and they're going to be a part of it. So maybe I can talk to a certain somebody to make it happen.
That's awesome.
Guys, I hate to say this, but we have to kind of wrap it up because we're running out of. We're going to be cut off of YouTube here in a minute.
So I've got one more quick question, then going around to David and Drew really quick. And that's really how I like to close out my Thursday live shows is where can people find you on social media and what do you have going on coming up this next week or recent that people should be paying attention for?
Drew?
I am on Twitter at Drew_Zucker. I'm on Instagram. You would think I would have this stuff figured out by now with all the press we do, and yet I don't.
So funny.
My official website is artofdrewzucker.com. That's where all of my original art is available. And on Instagram, I am Drew Zucker Art.
And for me, on Twitter, I'm at David Booher. On Instagram, I'm at David M. Booher. My website is davidbooher.com. You can follow Canto on Instagram and Twitter at Canto Comics. Canto Comic. Sorry, it's getting late. At Canto Comic. And to plug what's coming next, Laser Like Focus on August 26th, which is Canto II #1, Canto II The Hollow Man #1. And please, please, please ask your LCS to get it, because nobody wants to be in a scenario where you're having to go to 3 different shops to find it.
Yes, and you guys have the homage, the TMNT homage, the 1 in 10.
Oh, the 1 in 10 by Ben
Oh.
Bishop is the TMNT tribute from the very first issue of TMNT by Kirkman and Laird. And then the 1 in 25 is one of my favorite artists, George Kaltsoudas, which is the Wizard of Oz fairy tale book.
So I was able to order a 1 in 25 and a 1 in 10 through my LCS because they had enough pull requests to hit that 25 book order. But when I asked if I could get that 1 in 50, they said that it wasn't available to them because I think there is a 1 in 50, right?
There is not.
No, there is
not.
They weren't lying to you. We just got to the 1 in 25.
Okay, gotcha.
My goal is a 1 in 100. Can you imagine?
Ooh,
That's awesome. That'd be crazy.
Someday, maybe someday.
We'll make it happen, guys. Hey, thank you again for joining us. Thank you for watching Mainframe Comic Con. Real quick, I'll ask you guys, did you get a chance to watch us this weekend?
I've been at work all weekend, so I plan on going backwards and checking out some of the panels that you guys did.
Are they going to be on YouTube?
We're going to put them all up on the Mainframe Comic Con. We did have one video that has one panel that got us 27 copyright strikes and banned in New Zealand. We are we are officially banned in New Zealand. But that's thanks to Norman. That was thanks to Norman Reedus and Dan Fogler. But besides that,
the PR from that is going to be totally worth it. So.
Epic. 27 copyright violations is
for a doorbell. Come on. A doorbell got you a copyright? How do you get a doorbell for a copyright? But you guys kicked ass. I love Canto. Andy, thank you for coming on. Guys, I usually say you can't stay, but you got to get the hell out of here. No, just stay home. That's all. And if you can hit that if you haven't gone, if you're watching us on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitch, Periscope, listening to the podcast, come to Mainframe Comic Con and hit that donate button for the Hero Initiative. All proceeds go to the Hero Initiative. Check out all the exclusive variants over. Check out the merch. I think there's an Amazing Fantasy 15 slabbed for the Slab Dragon if he wants to go in there and check it out. But with that, guys,
I'll close it out, man. I'm going to go peace out. I'm going to go pinkies out. I'm going to catch y'all on the flip side for the next one.
All right. Love you guys. Have a great night and God bless.
Thank you, guys.
Take care.